Today, I want to talk about finding common ground to communicate in productive ways. And I'm going to talk about it as a universal principle. And this work comes from the work of Nathaniel Newby. So I'm talking about the principle of effective action. And I want to start by breaking down each word. So, principle. A principle is a fundamental concept. It works like an equation. So it holds true across time and place. And, we could argue about a proven equation, but it's still a principle. It doesn't change the fact that it's a principle that works. And in Unity, our co-founders, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, they taught principles and they called them laws of being. And these principles address our existence in this universe and who we are as divine beings. And when we're aligned with the laws of being, we experience harmony and we experience that joy and that clarity and that peace that comes with being in harmony with life, being in the flow of life. So in the principle of effective action, the second word, effective, there's actually two ways to discuss effectiveness. One is in the human realm, who we are as human beings, and the other one is the spiritual realm, who we are as divine eternal beings. So first, in human terms, by effective we mean sustaining, supporting, or continuing our existence. For example, we need clean water to drink to continue our existence. And then in spiritual terms, in spirituality, by effective we mean supporting the progression of consciousness, helping us evolve as beings. So, for example, I could just sit here and speak gibberish and it would just be noise or chatter and it wouldn't really contribute to, effectively raising awareness. So that's what we do as spiritual beings. And then action. Action is energy in motion. It's anything that changes an energy configuration in the universe. So a conversation is action. Meditation is action. Having a thought is action because our thoughts can change our energy and can change the energy that we're putting out in the world. So what does this principle state? In human terms, we must take action to continue our existence or we cease to exist. That's it. We must take action to continue our existence or we cease to exist. And if we cease to exist, then we don't need to argue about anything because we're not existing. So spiritually, we're eternal divine beings, so we can't cease to exist spiritually. So spiritually, just some actions are more effective than others for helping humanity progress. And just like I said before, I could just sit here and string words together in gibberish, but that wouldn't really, help raise any kind of awareness or progress my consciousness in any way. So how do we apply the principle of effective action? So one way is that instead of having conversations about good, bad, right, wrong, better than, less than, we can ask, does this action address a concern that supports well-being? If I label something as good or bad, that sounds very subjective. It sounds like a judgment or even a criticism. For example, if I say someone is a bad politician or someone's a bad student, that doesn't feel very helpful for having a conversation. It can just trigger defensiveness or an argument, or it can cause someone to shut down. So instead, I can ask, does this action support well-being? For example, again, hopefully everyone in the world can agree that we need clean water to drink. So instead of fighting about being a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative or a progressive or anything else like that, maybe we can just ask, does this particular action result in clean water? And we need clean water to drink. And I can use the principle of effective action on myself. Because if I burden myself with regret and shame and guilt, then I'm not nurturing my own well-being. So I can choose actions, I can choose conversations, I can choose thoughts that are effective for me being in harmony with myself. We can use the principle of effective action like the golden rule, meaning that it applies to everyone, everywhere, regardless of their faith tradition, their worldview, their philosophy. So we don't have to argue about a religious perspective, for example, or a religious tradition. And even atheists and agnostics can agree that we must take action to continue our existence or we cease to exist. And we can use the principle of effective action to evaluate a teacher, a coach, a leader, or anyone else. For example, a drill sergeant may be very tough and very loud, but that drill sergeant also might be very effective in motivating people to work well together. So demeaning someone or harming them physically or emotionally doesn't promote well-being. But training people to be more focused and more resilient can be very productive. And some training methods are pretty severe or pretty rigorous. So effective action isn't always sweet and calm and quiet, but it does lead to harmony. So now we're going to apply this to spirituality. What about Jesus, for example? Jesus knew that he was upsetting the authorities, and he could have sustained his life by leaving town, by leaving the country, or by choosing to be quiet and stop antagonizing the powers that be. But he didn't do that. So from a human perspective, he did not take action that sustained his human life. But he didn't run away or be quiet. So he did, however, spiritually fulfill his role as an agent of change, as Messiah, as what Unity calls way shower. Traditional Christianity teaches that Jesus sacrificed himself to save our souls. And Unity teaches that Jesus demonstrated his oneness with God. He showed us our own oneness. He embodied that. And that's very effective for the progression of consciousness, for the well-being of humanity. So again, spiritually, we're eternal. We can't cease to exist. So when we transition from this life, then we release our human limitations. And hopefully we use this human life to learn, to progress, to evolve, to contribute to the progression, excuse me, the progression of humanity. And the best way to contribute to the progression of humanity is with our own self, right? With my own actions, my own thoughts, my own conversations, my own meditations, to get centered, focused, balanced, in harmony, being able to bring light and joy and clarity into the world. And so I'm not worried about fixing or changing other people. I just be who the best, most fulfilled, enlightened person I can be. And that changes the world. So sometimes well-being means releasing. Sometimes it means letting go. It means offering non-resistance. Let's talk about anger. Anger is a normal human emotion, and it can actually spark effective action. The action is effective if it promotes well-being or the evolution of awareness. So sometimes people use anger to make helpful changes in their lives. For example, to set clear boundaries about what they're willing and unwilling to accept for their own well-being or for the well-being of humanity. So anger is normal. It is even helpful when it spurs us into effective action. So anger is normal, but we don't have to react in ways that are hurtful or harmful. So to summarize, in our world, we see, and we often, I know I do this, we all probably do this sometimes, we label things as good, bad, right, wrong, better than, less than. But by choosing language that sounds less critical, we can find common ground to communicate about our well-being. So the principle of effective action is a tool that we can use to talk about what's happening in ourselves and in our world. So here's some things that we can ask. Is this thought I'm having effective for my well-being? So is that, is what I'm doing for myself effective for my own well-being? Is this way I'm talking about myself nurturing my existence? Is this conversation that I'm having about someone else honoring their right to exist, honoring them as a human being? Is this piece of legislation effective for sustaining life on this planet? Is this energy that I'm bringing into the world effective for nurturing well-being? So again, that's just some ways that we can apply this principle. And here's another little summary slide. So again, a principle is a fundamental concept about life. By effective, I mean, as a human being, is this continuing our existence? In the spiritual realm, is this helping to progress our awareness? Action is energy and motion. Everything's energy. We know that. A dream is energy. A thought is energy. Words change the energy configuration of this universe. So the principle states, as human beings, we must take action that continues our existence or we cease to exist. And as spiritual beings, how am I progressing in consciousness? So now I want to hear from you. So I have the list, and again, you never have to share. You can always pass. But if you have any feedback, any questions, also just want to hear how you're doing, because I mean, I know for me, this has been a rough week, and I have spent some time it's sad, honestly, and it's sometimes hard to find the light. That's just life. We suffer. We suffer, and coming together like this is helpful to remind ourselves who we are as human beings, and who we are called to be in this world. And when I was younger, I got out and protested and marched around capitals and yelled, and I respect that. But I also really, really believe that when I spend time in meditation, I'm affecting the energy in this planet. That, especially when I join together with like-minded beings, it's just powerful. I have a group that I meditate with once a week, and there's 3 of us. And it's like we form this triangle, this sacred circle, and it generates power. And I just can feel that we're sending out waves into the world, and that's sanity for me. That's necessary. So, all right. So thank you all.